Yes, hello, and welcome to Survivor Debrief. My name's Eden Porter, the lucky loser from Survivor Titans versus Rebels, and with me as always is my comedic partner and real-life brother, Joshua Porter. How you going, Josh?
I'm great. What a great episode. Loved it. Incredible.
Oh my God. It
Very
was
keen
top,
to get
it was
stuck
top level Survivor right here.
Yeah,
like,
big time.
it's really good. Let's just start off with, there was one thing I wanted to take from last episode that I think is really crucial for this episode. It was that comment that I think led to Andy really rethinking his position in the game, was when it got back to Andy that Jen had said, Andy's just getting dragged to the end. We've got to get rid of those people like Andy and Sue. And then Rachel told Andy that, and Andy was sort of incensed, like, oh, no one sees this. I think that was a window for Andy to realize, okay, this is how I am perceived in the game. And everyone keeps saying it. Thank you, Teeny. Perception is reality. Perception is reality. And Andy is a smart enough player to realize that, hang on, it doesn't matter what I feel, because a lot of people in that position go, oh, I'm actually really good. I'm actually really good. But he's like, I know what people think of me. I need to do something to start changing that thought process. And I think that's what put everything in motion. It's really incredible.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing, because in all his confessionals, we've heard from Andy how I'm talking to everyone. I've got great relationships with them. I'm doing so much. Nobody knows how much I'm doing.
Nobody knows.
And I heard that with Sue and Caroline being like, well, we're running this and nobody really knows. And I was like, you need to let everyone know at some point. Like, everyone needs to know.
Exactly.
So yeah, I agree that Andy's maybe he's seeing. He really needs to do some big visible things.
And he started in that. It's like, this is a great episode for Andy. I think we can all agree. Like, there is a lot happening here for him, and
Absolutely.
it's just really built to his resume. And it's, you know what's crazy? This is the sort of episode that Teeny and Sue need to have to try and put their mark on the game. Like, they need to be doing this, and we'll get to Teeny a bit later. But this is something that they should be doing. Like, this is the chance to do that. I just do want to say the Sue of it all, just to touch base on Sue for a moment. Sue literally, it was that tweedledum comment that must have just infected Sue for the entire game. It's wild. And how good did you notice that? How could you miss the editing of Sue, all the shots of Sue, and then it had Sue looking at Caroline going, "Oh, Caroline, you've got a small bit of dirt on your face," and Caroline wipes it off.
That was so funny, such funny timing based on what we chatted last week. It's great.
That was the editors having a bit of fun, I think. Jen at the start apologized to Andy. And so it was a big, Jen and Sam seemed to both target Andy from different angles. And Jen came back, and it was funny how Jen knew that Andy was annoyed that it got back to her that she had called him a goat. So at some point, at some point someone said, like, to Jen, oh yeah, Andy's really annoyed with you because you called him a goat. And it's so funny, when you have that information, you can then try and solve it. And she went to him, and her big realization about, oh, you've got to be emotional. It's like, yeah, Jen, you've got to make connections. Like, come on, that's Survivor. Like, what do you think of that? What do you think of that?
I really enjoyed this episode broadly with Jen. It feels like Jen's back, baby. She's back.
Jen's back. She's back.
Like, she kind of drifted away, and then over this last couple episodes where, like, she talked about at the start of this episode being this small target and not doing anything.
Yep.
And it's kind of like, is that possible at this point? It's like, I don't know if it is for someone like Jen to be like, well, and then she stopped doing stuff, so she doesn't deserve to win. Like,
exactly.
Yeah. So no, that doesn't put you below anyone else in terms of getting rid of. So I think it's the right move in the end to, like, try and re-engage with the game, to be like, well, I'm in this position now. I just need to work hard to get through, and to see her sort of fight back a bit and not be so like, oh, well, whatever.
I just do love, in one episode, it went from, I've just got to be small. I've just got to put my head down to, like, being part of this huge move. It's like stuff. The other thing was Teeny and Jen had this amazing conversation where Teeny unleashed this episode. Like, Teeny was all over it. And that conversation when they were sort of just chatting, and then Jen quite innocently said to her, like, I don't think you beat Rachel in the end. And then Teeny fires back.
Well, it's not a slam dunk.
It's not a slam dunk.
It's maybe a layup.
But Teeny fires back, are you threatening me, Michael?
It totally was. Like, I thought what Genevieve was saying was quite reasonable. Like, she was trying to build this case to be like, Rachel's a big threat. You got to watch out, because if you're sitting next to her at the end, might not go your way. And Teeny took that. And that, to me, speaks to someone who has insecurities about the way they've played the game, to being like, well, what are you talking about? And lashing out to be like, I know that's probably partly true, but I'm just going to fight back and say that's absolutely not true.
And I just thought it was really interesting. It was connecting with the emotion. Like, obviously, Teeny has played the game quite emotionally, and this was a response. Like, this was another response to that. And they talk later on about having to try and be less emotional. But this was this was just firing back. And good on them for firing back at Jen and not just being like, okay, that's interesting. They really sort of started pushing it. The other thing that was, I love this line. It's such a good line from Jen when she said about Rachel's playing the game that I wanted to play. I love that line. Like it's such a good way to get people on board because you're like, oh man, I wish I was playing like that. I wish I did all this stuff. This is cool. And little do you know, the other person knows that you've got stuff in your back pocket. But if you're just projecting that sort of comment, I just love that as a comment. Well,
that just spoke to me of like, as we said, Jen coming back to be like, okay, what's the inroad here? What can I do? Yes, they're a type 5, type 4. Rachel, you've got to let people know there's a bigger target out here. Use my vote in this moment.
Yeah. And Teeny, I think, is feeling that they are in the majority and that everything's going right and that they can make a decision that affects the game. And that should have been the first sign that things were going to blow up. Because I love Teeny. I've said it before, they are too good for this game, too sweet for this game. And every time they're in a position that they think is good, it ends up blowing up. I just can't believe it. Then we get to the challenge, the first challenge. And shout out to Jeff mentioning all the fixins.
Oh, yes.
Like he said it. I was so glad
Sam was like, the fixins. He's like, absolutely.
Absolutely. Those interesting challenge, great comeback win.
Do you know probably the best part of the reward, Ed?
What was that, mate?
The tiramisu.
Oh, yeah. Tiramisu.
Just call it tiramisu.
Right. Just call it tiramisu. No. It's tiramisu. Sam, great comeback win.
Huge.
And then
nailed the net crawl.
Okay, so do you know that those nets are way tighter on you than you think? Like they are actually pretty hard. So then comes the $1 million question, Josh. It's who do you take on this reward at the Survivor Sanctuary? Now I'm going to throw something out here because conventional survivor wisdom, Josh, says you should always leave an ally back at camp to monitor what's going on so you have an understanding of what some of the conversations are. Now, Sam has blown that out of the water, and I think this is a really, really interesting to be like, no, I'm just going to take my group with me, the people that I think I can work with. I'm not leaving anyone back at camp. They can do whatever they want. They can hate on us. And we have now got 24 hours just to sit down and figure out something that we can do together as a group. And I liked it. And it was going against conventional wisdom, but I love that. I'd love that.
I think when there's so few people, I think because the trouble with leaving the ally behind, right? Unless you discuss it, that person gets pissed off because they miss out on their thing. Like that happens a lot, that they feel maybe slightly outed. But generally, I'm like, it's always going to be a tough decision. But I think in this case, as much as Teeny ranted and raved about it, time and time again, taking people who aren't your allies gets you nothing. Like so often they go, whatever, thanks for the thing, dude. We'll vote you out next time anyway.
Yeah, 100%.
So I don't think it's necessarily a bad move to be like, wow, you really blew your shot by not bringing Teeny along. It's like, well, evidently not. But also it's like, to me, that doesn't always play. It's like, I like the idea of, particularly Jen, I feel like you've got to take Jen when you're that low on the bottom. Like, it's so obvious. You're going to do it anyway. You're not going to get any bad press for it. You know what I mean? So that other pick of Andy, though, it was really interesting because I was thinking when he picked Andy, I was like, okay, is this like a massive throwback? He's been with this guy from the start. Yeah. Is this what he thinks the inroad is? It's not Teeny. The inroad here is going to be Andy.
I think there's a sense that Teeny, and this is what happens when you make your bed and you lie in it. When you are so adamant, you make it so obvious that it's like, this is the plan. They are on the bottom. And that's what Teeny was championing. And I think that's come through. And when you make it so obvious, it's like, well, no, I'm not going to bring you because that's dead to me. That relationship is dead. Andy, there is still a kernel of hope. And Andy is someone that I could talk to. And if Sam said the same thing, Sam was literally like, I was not the ally to you that I should have been at the start of the game, and I apologize. And they both really came hat in hand to Andy and put that out there, and I think he loved that.
They buttered Andy up real good.
Oh, so good. Just that. Can't believe it's not butter. Just all over Andy. It was amazing.
It really was interesting. Like, as we've seen from Andy throughout this, like that, those little moments of personal connection, he really flip-flops. It's really interesting. Like he talks about this strategic game. I'm like, I'm going after the people. They've got no idea. I love this. I'm tricking this person. And then there's the moments of like very early on, oh, no one cheated when I cut open a coconut. It's like, oh my God, Sam, you would take me? That's so, oh my God. Like you could see it in his face. Like some of those moments really meant a lot to him. And it's like, clearly, I don't know if Sam's identified that's the kind of person Andy is, but it's very clever to go like, well, how do we appeal to this person? And it's got to be these big gestures, maybe this camaraderie.
I completely agree. And then we're in the sanctuary, right? And this I find this actually, before we get to the sanctuary, what about Teeny putting their hand up to speak to Jeff after he chose people?
Yeah.
Do you put a hand up and go,
now.
I would like to speak? And she just absolutely like railroaded. This is the worst decision ever.
It's so silly. Like in that moment, obviously emotional, but all the things Teddy was saying, I was kind of like, nah, like it's fine. What he picked to me was fine. I don't think he burnt some bridge.
So totally fine.
And just before we move to the reward challenge, is there any part of you that goes at this point in the game, I don't want to win challenges unless it's for immunity?
No, you should definitely want to win challenges. Okay. Like you should definitely want, like you saw how they were playing it. We definitely want to win challenges across the board. And being
what if you're like a Rachel winning that immunity, winning that reward, and then you've got to pick two of those alliance members? Does that become problematic when your alliance is bigger?
Look, yeah, I think the food at this point in the game is really important and it's really good. It's
you know nothing about
you
that.
want yeah, I know it's correct. But what you actually want to be, you want your ally to win and then pick you. That's the ultimate spot to be in. Like that's what you want to do. But if you're not sure that's going to happen, then I think getting the food in your belly is really handy. Although they've only been out there for 20 days. Like there's that as well. The letters from home. Like everyone wanted them, and that added a little sting. That added a little
big sting.
Little
I think
sting
that's a
to
massive
it.
Sting.
Yeah. So with this plan as well, which is the other reason why I loved it, is when all three of you are away and you come up with this plan, right? It removes the fact that when you get back, you have to talk to each other. And you totally remove that aspect of, hang on, why is Andy spending so much time talking to Jen and talking to Sam? Why is he doing that? It totally removed that. So Andy knew all I have to do is talk to the guys and lay the plan out. And I don't have to go to talk to Sam. I don't have to go to Jen. I don't have to look dodgy. And that was just chef's, like that's such a big part of it. Because I know when I was playing, you always see people going up together in that scramble and you know exactly who everyone's talking to. But if you have that and you are confident in that group that you can come back and not talk to each other and have a plan in play, oh, dude, it's the dream. Absolute dream.
Can I just ask you, Eden, in terms of Operation Italy, how does the middle-aged mafia feel about that?
Yeah, no. Well, they were mentioning hits and everything. I just think it's a match made in heaven. The Operation Italy and the middle-aged mafia coming together.
An organised Italian crime. It's beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. It's great.
I quite liked the establishment of this. Like, it really felt like Andy's like, okay, what have we got to do? And to me, I haven't seen something quite like this before, where it's been such a clearly defined, here are all the pieces. You've got this role. You've got this role. You've got this role. Let's make it happen. I loved it.
We have not had a really good plan for a while. Like in terms of this is the plan. Let's see if we can pull it off. This is really good.
Well, it's proper subterfuge. Like everyone had to play their bit to trick everyone.
So good. That's so good. Back at camp, the 4 left behind, right? I liked, there was just one moment I wanted to highlight. When Caro was sort of talking to everyone saying, we're all pretty equal. We can all sort of win. I think like she was just setting everyone up to be like, okay, I think we are on board. And I think Sue believes that. And I think Teeny,
she was laying it on thick.
It's like, okay, this is good. And I think Caro was doing everything right, which like we'll get to Caro later, but yeah.
I that was an interesting moment to be like, hey guys, let's not rock this boat. Like we're all in a pretty good spot here, aren't we? And then I did find it interesting though, as to your point, that sell from Andy, and it was interesting, the same terminology and the same phrases came out with everyone, but just his ability to sell, they pushed me the wrong way, it didn't really work. Like,
I believe it was wine and dine.
Wine and dined, yes, and they strong-armed him, shoving that wine into his face. But I thought he did a really good job, and clearly did a very, very good job. And that's what I find so interesting about Andy through this whole thing. People's read on him just they don't seem to get it. It's so fascinating. It's awesome. It's so weird. And this is, and I'm not sure, it hasn't actually happened too much, but when someone is perceived as a goat, Yeah.
that they've risen from the ashes of this goat like some sort of manticore, like with its goat. And like it's amazing. And like, can you turn the goat around? Because people get to the end game and they feel like turn this
goat right around.
If you guys don't vote the way I want, I'm going to turn this goat right around. We're going to head back to the island. No, but it's really interesting because it is someone going, I'm perceived this way. I need to do something to change that perception. And this is 100% Andy's move. Like this is, everyone had a part to play, but Andy was the one that flipped. Andy was the one that wanted to do it. I think naming the operation is really good. I think doing it at Final 7, it's an odd number. Always make moves on odd numbers. I think Sam, it's when they like everything is logical. Like it's logical for Sam to say, yeah, look, I really want to get rid of Rachel, but if you guys tell me to do Jen, I'll do Jen. Like that's a sell.
Go with the voters. Yeah,
that's 100% what you would say. Jen's a whole idol of it all, and being able to see what Sam's look like and try and copy that, like that's just it's so good. But it gave Andy the ability to just go, I know what I have to do. It's really clear in my head, and they talked through every machination of it. I felt
what I found interesting about Andy's position in all this and to come up with the plan is he must have got I think there's two things he's thinking I need to make some big moves to put my stamp on this game, but also I think he might have been reading I'm on the bottom of this fight, like I don't feel that comfortable that these people are going to come along with me, and we saw that very clearly with those 4 back at camp that Andy was on the bottom of that, so I think he read that really well.
Andy went from 5th to 3rd, theoretically, in the game. And I think he must have sensed that. And when they said that, they said, and then we'll get rid of Andy. I'm like, that was their plan all along. And so for him, some part of him must have sort of sensed that, I think. But then it was good. The paranoia about Jen's idol, you don't say Jen has an idol. You start off going, I'm worried about the idol. I'm worried about it. Should you be worried? I think we should be worried. But interestingly enough, Teeny pushed back. Teeny was like, no.
Yeah,
I want Sam. I want to get Sam out.
And that again speaks to that emotional side of Teeny to be like, no, stuff the plan. Sam's got to go. Like, I just want to get rid of Sam. And what a fascinating, if that had put a wrinkle in the plan that they didn't have the chance to split it. Well, that would have been quite fascinating.
Because they would have gone, because if that's the case, they would have gone, well, Jen's not going to play her idol for Sam. So Jen, and Andy really saying we've got to put more votes on Jen just to make sure she has to use the idol. Yeah. That's again logical. Like that's a logical plan. But it's really it's funny. Teeny's emotion nearly put a big error in that. So then we get to it. We get to a point as well. I just want to bring it up now. Was when Jen tells Teeny walks up on Jen and Sam, and Jen just straight up says, "Oh yeah, get him on me if you know what I mean." Like a day before, Jen and Teeny were hating on each other to the point of this is not real. And then why Teeny? Why give that information to Teeny?
It's all part of Operation Italy, okay? It's all part of Operation Italy. It's very well thought out.
So Teeny did the right thing by saying, show me the parchment, right? Mm-hmm. And then Jen had a response in place knowing that someone would ask that, where Jen said, I buried the parchment. And this is the point where Teeny needs to go, okay, let's dig up the parchment. Let's go and get it. Let's dig it up. Let's do it. Are we doing this? Are we doing it? Let's do it. Dig it up. Dig it up. But the thing is, and this is again, it comes back to emotion, Josh, because Teeny wanted that to be true. Teeny wanted Jen to have an idol so Sam would go home. Yes. So Teeny was more inclined to believe that and going, oh my God, this is perfect. Jen's going to stay, use her idol, and Sam's going to go home. And that is the fatal flaw.
So and I don't know if we've kind of jumped around a bit, but just under the understanding that we had the immunity challenge and Rachel won it. Yeah. So Rachel being the original target, I was quite worried that, well, what is this new? Because everyone's been building up Rachel as this big threat. So in the absence of that vote being possible, can you swing it? And I was like, of course, Caro's the next logical one in terms of threats on that thing, on who was left. Yeah. And I did find it really interesting, like, making that the new play and just being like, yep, that's what we've got to do. That's where we're going to be now. We don't have Rachel, and they managed to sell it well enough.
So 2 things. One, if Rachel doesn't win this, is she more likely to get spooked and play her idol? Which is possible because she definitely would have been the target, and everyone would have known that. If there's any funny business, the good thing about this plan as well, though, like I think everyone in the back of their mind was saying, well, if Jen uses an idol, then I'll use my idol.
Yes.
But this plan, you don't have to do anything to show your hand because you don't have anything. So the absence of doing anything gives people confidence that it's not going to happen. Again, a brilliant little touch on the plan there.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. So the thing is, everyone was going, you know what? If anyone uses an idol, I'll use my idol. And that you go into tribal council with that mentality saying, I don't need to use this unless Jen uses that because you can't see anything else.
Because there's zero reason for her not to play it. So it's like, well, and then she doesn't have it. So
yeah, exactly. Now, the other thing I loved, it just with the challenge, I just want to touch on that. Do you reckon Sam, because if Sam or Jen win this challenge, this plan doesn't work?
You reckon?
Yeah. Because if Sam wins,
they have to load all the votes.
Then they go. Jen could have an idol. So then who does it split on? Then suddenly, we're splitting on Andy, and then Andy's then like, oh well, I'm gonna jump on here, and then everything changes.
Yeah, that's
at that
true.
point. So I think maybe Sam could have thrown that challenge.
At this stage of the game, I don't think he would ever give up individual immunity.
But it honestly would have ruined the plan. It would have ruined the plan.
Operation Italy would have gone south. One of my big questions for you though, in terms of the Underdog Alliance, the Above Dog Alliance,
the Above Dogs.
So, did they have the right amount of trust in Andy that they should have to include him as part of a split vote?
Well,
should you have been more skeptical?
Not.
No, but like it seemed like. Should you not be a little bit more skeptical to be like, he's just gone away for 24 hours with these people? Maybe we shouldn't do a split vote on this one. Yeah.
And you know what? He must have sold it, man. He must have sold this humble, like, guys, I'm really worried about this. We got to do this. He didn't come back and say, we need to split the votes. Why? Just because we have to split it.
Yeah.
You've got to have a reason. And it's just like, I'm just worried that she's got something. I got the feeling that there was something there. But then the icing on the cake is then Teeny knowing that Jen has an idol at this point. That sort of confirms that Andy's suspicion is correct. So Andy is on their side. So everything sort of confirms everything else. And look, I was going to get to this bit later, but honestly, I think Rachel, what should have happened, I know this is coulda, woulda, shoulda, but if you were in a position where you're splitting votes, and Rachel said this in a confessional, that she said, all it would take would be for one person, if we're splitting, to flip and it blows everything up.
Yeah.
I think what you do in this case is you vote Andy out.
Yeah,
the four girls call an audible and go, you know what? It's going to take one.
At what moment?
At one person to flip. I think you do it just before tribal, and you say, and I think Rachel could put it out there and go, you know what? There is a possibility, however slim, that someone could flip on this situation. So you know what we should do? I think the play would have been get out the person that's going to be fifth because we don't know what's happening with the idols. We don't know about Jen's idols. Let's vote out the person that's going to be fifth. Then it leaves those two. Hopefully one of them uses an idol, and then we can still split against them.
I think from Rachel's position, I think you're probably better off just to use your blocker, right? Be like, everyone knows about that. Does that have a time? Is that down to 5 or something? Is it or?
I think maybe yeah. I know the idols will have to be used up.
I guess, in a moment where you're like, it just takes one person, one of us to move.
Yeah.
But then it just speaks to Andy selling it so well, right?
But again, it speaks to everything, Josh, but it also speaks. There's a lot of speaking going on. No, it speaks to Rachel
having in Operation Italy.
It speaks to Rachel having immunity and knowing that she can't go home.
It does speak to that.
And so if you're that confident, you don't need to, because when you're in that position, right, and it could be you.
You see this a lot, yeah.
You go, you know what, we need to do something to make sure it's not me. We need to change it up because I'm worried. The fact that she was immune made her less likely to change the plan at that point in the game.
It is interesting once that threat drops on yourself and the fear of going home, it's like it actually really does change how you play.
And another thing I wanted to talk about, which I thought is, now hear me out, Josh. Why did this happen? How it came together? Why did it happen the way it happened? Mm-hmm. I'm going to put something out there. I think this is a direct correlation with nobody having shots in the dark.
Oh, huge.
So what I think, no one has shots in the dark. So it removes that ability or that mindset of we've got to sort of really blindside people. We've got to really trick them. We've got to bring them in and make sure they don't use it. So it became very clear who was on the bottom. Teeny made it very evident that it was us versus them. They said pecking order in bloody tribal council and stuff like that. It was very evident that it happened. And when everyone is comfortable knowing, hey, this is the plan. They can't do anything about it. There's no shots in the dark. We don't have to sugarcoat this. We're splitting the vote. If everyone does what everyone says, this is 100% going to work. When you know where all the pieces are, that gives you an opportunity to change the board.
Yes.
Because you know what everyone's doing, and position with someone like Andy who goes, I know exactly what they're doing now. And if I do this, then this can move me further in the game.
Yeah.
And I think that's in relation to the way that it panned out, the way that everyone knew the pecking order and everything like that. I think that's because no one has shots in the dark.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
I agree. I think it's, but like you said, that's such a nice way to put it. With Andy, had all the information from all the sides. He was really the one player who had the complete picture, so he was exactly able to maneuver and do what he wanted to do. It was such a good. I don't know. I just loved that it was such an explicit plan. It had so many specific parts. And the way Jed built it up is like there's so many parts this could fall over.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
But I think it just Andy just absolutely killed it.
So I think this is bad. Like, this is so bad for Caro, obviously, because I honestly think that if the target was Rachel goes home, and then I think it opens up more avenues for Caro. I don't think everyone is instantly coming back at Caro after that. I think it then flips back to a Sam or a Jen or an Andy who have just done this thing. And I think Caro is almost more likely to win now because Rach isn't there. And Caro's done a really good job of managing her threat level. And so if she gets to the end with a Sue and with a Teenie, Caro 100% wins.
Yeah.
At that point in the game. That's my feeling anyway.
I did feel quite bad for Caro. It feels like almost like a twist screw. It's like kind of didn't do anything drastically wrong. Someone else completely outplayed you. And the exact person you specifically didn't want to win immunity, they kind of got it, which made you the fall person. Like, I did feel bad for Caro that I didn't feel there was much more she could have done beyond not trusting Andy, I guess.
Caro was in a position where she was seen as the person that was the quote unquote brains of the operation. But not a big enough threat to be like, we have to get Caro out. Yeah. So, but it just meant that in that, like what Jen was talking about, Jen was like, oh, we need to get rid of the Sues and stuff that are taking our positions up. And so then Caro has a way to sneak through there as well. I just think she was really well placed. And it's just so unfortunate that Rachel got that immunity win.
My other question to you, like, what do you see Andy wanting to make this big move? What do you see as his path moving forward now? Because he's clearly got Jen and Sam. How does he work with the others at this point? Can he work with the others at this point?
Rach has such a bag of tricks now that you've got to know that something's up there. So Andy needs to be Andy still needs to be the person bouncing between. So Andy needs to get rid of Jen 100%. Andy needs to get rid of Rachel 100% at 2 points. I'll tell you right now, Rachel better start practicing fire because Rachel is being sent to fire. Like I see that coming 100%, 100% Rachel. And so then you might need to think of who is good at fire and can beat Rachel in it to get her out of the game, because I feel like that's where it's going to come down to. Yeah. And someone like Sam is going to beat her in fire, I think. That's just what I'm thinking.
The other question I had, we had that little moment right towards the end before the votes were read where Andy did that little whisper to Jen of like, you play right.
Oh, I love that.
Do it. Do you reckon that was good?
Yeah, I love that. Because it was subtle. You didn't like it? You thought it was too over the top?
It felt a bit much like Eddie, I'm kind of like, oh God, are you blowing it right now? And even Andy, a lot of the stuff he was saying during Trouble, I was like, oh my God, are you talking too much? Are you blowing it right now? Like, in terms of solidifying that relationship between the three of them, like I was worried some of the stuff he was saying might people go, Andy seems a lot closer with these guys than I thought. Like, I should be already here. But yeah, that last little whisper, I don't know if that pushes it over the top.
No, but the votes were already done at that point.
I know.
So you can't change the game. But in saying that, it sort of maybe sets it up for maybe we can use the idol next game. But what I think is going to happen is, what's going to happen is Andy's going to tell everyone Jen doesn't really have an idol. It was all fake. And then it's going to open Jen up as a target again. Because if everyone still thinks Jen has an idol, then who's going to be the target? Sam and Andy at that point. Yeah. So I think you need to make it really well known that that was totally fake. And you need to put that out into the world. Yep. Sam, so I thought Sam's acting. I thought everyone's acting was really good. Everyone
did such a good job.
But
Operation Italy, flawless.
I do think that it was Andy's. You've got to credit this to Andy, yeah?
Yeah, well, if you want to get to who
Spin and grin.
Spin and grin time.
It's got to be Andy, 100%.
It's got to be Andy. It's got to be Andy this time.
To pull all this together and to have the vision to be like, all right, guys, let's think this through. And really, like, it seemed like they really, really thought through as you've spoken about, like you have that time there just to think. You go to bed, like all you're needing to think about is like, cool, what's my role here? What do I need to sell here?
And you need to know the questions that will be asked, and you need to have a plan, because sometimes what gets people undone is they go, okay, I've got to tell everyone I've got a fake idol, but then they're not thinking about, okay,
where'd you find it?
Where'd you find it? Where's the note? It was in the tree. So that in itself is, you got to think of all those answers, and when you're away from the group, you have time to think of that stuff. And I think that really sort of put it all together. But so in the end game, right? So at this point, I still feel like Teeny, like who does Teeny beat?
Maybe a Sue. I think Sue's the only one Teeny can beat. I just feel maybe Sam, but
I think now Sam's part of this move. Like being part of this move is huge for the jury. It's huge. Yeah. But Teeny is likable. And so you need to go to the end with maybe someone that's not as likable. But I think everyone...
Which could be Andy for the double crossing, like depending on how people feel about that once they go out.
Yeah, and we can see now that Teeny can like push people and be like, no, we don't want to do this. But it's just like Andy's got this move on his resume. I think all the players in the game respect moves. And I think this is going to be seen as a big move. I just wish that like these other people... They should have been thinking, I only have a couple more chances to do something in the game to really change things up. And everyone should be if you don't have what you think is a resume, you should be looking at doing something. I just think there's not enough opportunities to do that now.
Yeah. Do you think you get sucked into, well, oh my God, I'm so close. This is my comfortable way to get there. That's better than a risky way to make some waves.
You're not going to win. You're not going to win comfortably getting to the end, because there's too many people that have done other things. But it's about, again, it comes back to self-awareness and understanding. Like, this has been great for Andy, the point that someone said to him, you are seen as a GOAT.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, and it's funny that if you look at both reactions, someone says that to Andy, and his response is, "Well, I need to change that perception of me." And honestly, Jen said the same thing sort of to Teeny, and Teeny's response was to refuse it and to refute it and to say no. And it's just really interesting parallels between these two, and we'll see how it plays out in the game. But I just thought that was really good.
Yeah.
What about ruffling feathers?
It was to rustle feathers.
Sorry,
ruffle feathers.
Sorry.
It's got to be Andy again, doesn't it?
It's got to be the double. Jen got the double. Did Jen get the... No, Rachel got the double last week.
I think so, yeah.
And now, Andy's got to be getting it now.
Yeah,
maybe we're at the point of
Russell feathers.
Thank you so much. I think it's just... Yeah, I think putting cats amongst the pigeons.
Amazing episode for Andy, and it boggles my mind that this is the same guy from that first episode, and that people's reads on him seem so all over the place. Everyone seems to like him. He's chatting with everyone. Then he pulls stuff like this, and people are still like, yeah, Eddie's going to get dragged to the end. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. People are going to still think that, and they're going to take him to the end, and he is going to be able to articulate all these things that he's done, and he's got a really good chance of winning if people want to keep him.
And he'll be able to tell them the exact percentage chance he has to win.
Yeah, 6.6 repeating, of course. Yeah, awesome, just awesome episode. So top tier Survivor play. I just loved it. I loved it.
Just a reminder as well, if you do enjoy the show, please rate us on any podcast apps you listen to.
Please rate and subscribe. We are, as someone said, critically undersubscribed.
We did. Yes, if you're watching on YouTube or on your podcast apps, just leave a comment. It's also really lovely to read and respond to the comments and stuff. Great. So if you got anything you want to chat about, chuck it on the videos, and we'll go back to it.
Yeah. Excellent. That's it. We got 2 episodes left, Josh.
I just quickly want to check as well. Who do you think had a bad night?
Oh yeah, sorry. It's in my notes here. It's Caro.
Caro.
Yeah, it's Caro. It's Caro. It's Caro.
Shocker.
Absolute shocker. So like this is the end, man. 2 more episodes. So let's buckle ourselves in for an amazing end game. It should be good. Okay. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.